All right, let's open up the Ultimate Cultural Hackers Playbook for celpip Task 5. If you've ever stared at that classic community garden versus park and ride prompt and wondered, how on earth do I guarantee a top score here? Well, you are in exactly the right place. We are completely skipping the basic grammar lessons today. You already know that stuff. Instead, this explainer is going to use our whiteboard strategy to hack the Canadian examiner's mindset. We are focusing purely on the cultural logic and high-level strategies you need to secure that elusive CLB 10+ score. Okay, here's our blueprint for today. We'll be covering 1. Decoding the Canadian mindset. 2. The winning logic tree. 3. High-scoring vocabulary arsenal. 4. Inside the examiner's mind. 5. Avoiding hidden point traps. And finally, 6. The universal master formula. Let's jump right in. Section 1. Decoding the Canadian mindset. To completely crush Task 5, you really have to understand that getting a top score isn't just about flawless English grammar. It is entirely about your ability to speak the language of the Canadian suburban lifestyle. Examiners aren't just listening to how you conjugate verbs, right? They want to see if you deeply understand cultural values like environmentalism, community cohesion, and quality of life. Choosing the community garden isn't just a random choice. It's a strategic alignment with these core Canadian values. And here is our absolute secret psychological weapon, NIMBY. It literally stands for not in my backyard, or as you might say in Chinese, 别叫我在家后院. This is a massive, massive cultural phenomenon in North America. See, residents might totally support building a new parking lot or transit hub in theory, but the second you try to build it next to their actual house, they will fight it tooth and nail. We're going to use this exact psychological concept to completely dismantle the park and ride option. But hold on. Before we attack the other option, we have to play by Canadian rules. I totally see your angle on. This phrase right here is what I call Canadian cushioning. Culturally, it is basically mandatory to be extremely polite and validate the other person's perspective before you completely disagree with them. Starting your 60-second speech with this exact phrase, it instantly proves to the examiner you understand North American conversational tactics. Okay, Section 2, the winning logic tree. Now that we understand the mindset, let's structure your answer. When the clock starts and you get those 60 seconds of prep time, please don't just write down random words. You need a visual map. Think of this as your 60-second roadmap. Here is your airtight 5-step logic tree, branch by branch. Step 1, as we just discussed, is your cushioning. Acknowledge the parking lot is good for commuters. Step 2, pivot to the pros of the garden, focusing on quality of life like mental health and green spaces. Step 3 builds on that with social cohesion, explaining how the garden brings neighbors together. Then step 4, boom, we launch our NIMBY rebuttal against the parking lot, pointing out the traffic and pollution it brings. Finally, step 5, we close the whole thing out with a strong call to action. This specific structure guarantees you won't freeze up and your argument will flow perfectly. Section 3, high-scoring vocabulary arsenal. So the crucial point is, knowing the structure is only half the battle. To actually execute this logic tree and grab that CLB 10, you need the right ammunition. Generic words simply won't cut it. Let's upgrade that quality of life vocabulary right now. Instead of just saying city, say we live in a concrete jungle, or 钢筋水泥丛林, to highlight why we desperately need green spaces. Don't just say the garden is fun. Say it will foster community spirit, or 培养社区凝聚力. Talk about families growing locally sourced produce, meaning 本地有机农产品, rather than just food. And describe the garden as a sanctuary, or retreat, a real 避风港 for mental well-being. Using these exact words instantly elevates your speech with this deeply positive, community-focused tone. Now let's dramatically shift gears for our Step 4 NIMBY rebuttal. Your tone here should sound slightly concerned. The parking lot isn't just ugly, it's an absolute eyesore, a real CJ Warren. It won't just bring bad air, it brings exhaust fumes, chiche wei chi. And the extra traffic won't just be loud, it will be a major nuisance or disturbance, a real zurao. These are incredibly potent, slightly negative words that perfectly capture that local resident anxiety we talked about. Moving to Section 4. Inside the examiner's mind. Let's pull back the curtain for a second here. What exactly is the examiner listening for to give you maximum coherence and vocabulary scores? And this brilliantly illustrates the concept of lexical range through emotional contrast. It's literally a battle of good versus evil.
by describing your choice, the garden, with beautiful, uplifting words like sanctuary and well-being, and then describing the parking lot with harsh, industrial words like concrete jungle and eyesore. You are demonstrating massive range. You're showing the examiner you can seamlessly navigate both ends of the emotional spectrum in English.
Also, beyond just the descriptive vocabulary, examiners are obsessed with your transitions. Most test takers use these generic textbook phrases like first of all and on the other hand. Look, if you want a top score, swap those out for authentic North American phrasing. Use for starters to open your first point, and on the flip side to introduce your NIMBY rebuttal. It just sounds infinitely more natural and fluent. Okay, Section 5, avoiding hidden point traps. Now you really want to pay close attention here because even if your vocabulary is stellar and your logic tree is perfect, there are 3 hidden traps that can absolutely ruin your score. Let's make sure we don't lose any easy marks. Trap number 1 is making arguments that are way too abstract. Take a statement like, the garden is good for the environment. It makes air clean. I mean, sure, it's grammatically correct, but it's completely empty. It lacks detail, it lacks that Canadian cultural context, and honestly, it's only going to earn you a very average score.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how simple the fix is. The examiner demands concrete, vivid details. So instead of it makes air clean, try saying it's educational for kids to learn how to grow locally sourced produce. Do you see the difference there? This paints a highly specific picture of community life using our high-scoring vocabulary arsenal. So rule of thumb, never be abstract, always be specific.
Trap number 2 is all about phonetics. You've got these great words, but you actually have to say them right. Take the word for crops, produce. When it's a noun, you absolutely must stress the first syllable, produce. If you stress the second syllable, produce, it becomes a verb, and the examiner will immediately dock you points. And for our favorite negative word, eyesore, make sure you say it fluidly as one connected word, eyesore. No awkward pauses in the middle. The final trap, a weak conclusion. A lot of test takers just finish up by saying, let's tell the manager or let's tell the city. Instead, use this incredibly authentic cultural term, town hall meeting. This is exactly how local democracy works in Canada for municipal projects. Ending your speech by saying, let's back the garden proposal at the next town hall, how does that sound, is literally the ultimate high-scoring mic drop.
Finally, Section 6, the Universal Master Formula. Let's move to our last part and see how this all builds into something even bigger. The absolute best part of this entire strategy is that the logic tree we just built isn't just for the community garden prompt. It is a universal master key. Look at how rapidly we can map our exact good versus evil strategy onto other common Task 5 topics. If the prompt is a dog park versus a commercial plaza, you use the exact same logic. The dog park is a sanctuary for leisure, and the plaza brings a nuisance of traffic and noise. What about a sports field versus a computer lab? The field promotes mental well-being outdoors, while the lab promotes a sedentary lifestyle. Rooftop garden versus a gym? The garden fosters community spirit, while the gym can be totally isolating. Once you learn this framework, you can adapt it to almost anything they throw at you. So what does this all mean for you? When it comes to conquering this task, realize that there are absolutely no right or wrong choices between option A and option B. Mastering the test is completely about leveraging Canadian cultural logic, utilizing those emotional word contrasts, and delivering targeted rebuttals. It's all about how authentically you can argue your point. I want to leave you with this final thought to really spark that cultural hacker mindset. Look around your own neighborhood today. Next time you see an empty lot, what will you argue to build in your backyard? Will it be a concrete jungle or a sanctuary that fosters community spirit? Practice viewing the world through this lens, and you will be more than ready for exam day.